Hey there, survivors. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's episode. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now let's get started. It's been 2 years since the world ended, and I still don't sleep on beds. Couches maybe. Roofs when the weather's right. Barn lofts, box trucks, church pews. But never beds. Beds are for people who think they're safe. I turned 17 last month. At least I think I did. Hard to be sure without a calendar. I keep track by the sun and seasons, by how much more rust there is on old billboards, and how long it's been since the last fire in a city I don't name. I don't say their names anymore. There's no point. Nashville, Memphis, Little Rock, they're all bones and ash now. If I call them by name, it feels like I'm pretending there's still something there. I've made it by moving. Never more than a month in one spot. Never 2 nights in the same house. Keep walking, keep quiet, keep clear of crowds. Doesn't matter if they're alive or dead. People in groups stop thinking. They start needing. They start choosing leaders. And the second someone says, "Trust me," I leave. Right now, I'm in the woods. 3 miles south of what used to be Highway 431. The air smells like burnt pine and wet soil. Something big must have burned here a while back. Old fire, low to the ground, the kind that crawls and doesn't roar. The brush is brittle, and I can see the char ring on tree trunks up to my shoulder. This isn't a place to stay, but it's a good place to pass through. I've got a slingshot, a pocket knife, and a bolt-action rifle I took off a National Guardsman 6 months ago. He didn't need it anymore. Neither did the thing chewing on his leg. I carry 3 rounds in the stock and 2 in my coat. I don't waste ammo. Not on them. I call them drifters, because that's what they do. Shuffle and drift like smoke from a fire that won't die out. Some are fresh, still in ripped clothes and swollen skin. Others look like they've been walking since the outbreak. Skin like parchment, empty eyes, fingers worn to bone. I hear them before I see them. Always. I stop now, mid-step, because I caught the sound. Not a voice, not a shout, just shuffling, dull, directionless. A branch cracks underfoot, not mine, low and deliberate. I lower myself beside a stump and listen. It's about 50 yards west. No growl, no wet breath, just dragging. One of them, maybe 2. I wait. Patience keeps you alive. When the sound fades, I slip past, staying in the brush, keeping the wind to my face. I only go into town when I have to. Yesterday, I broke into a feed store near an old fairground and found a half bag of jerky sealed in a bucket labeled "for dogs." I ate it anyway. I don't get picky. The town had no power, no cars, no people, just wind chimes. 100 of them hanging from porches, trees, fences, all different shapes. They sounded like ghosts laughing. I hated it. That's where I saw them the first time. I didn't make a sound, didn't move, just crouched behind a split-rail fence with a broken gate and watched as a group of 6 passed down the main street. No gear, no packs, barely any clothes. Most of them were naked or wrapped in rags. Their bodies were smeared with something dark, blood, or mud, or both. One had a branch tied to her back like wings. Another had bite marks down his side, old and blackened. But he wasn't a drifter. He was alive and walking with them. They didn't act infected. No limp, no moan, no hunger in their eyes. They weren't scavengers either. No weapons, no fire, just walking. Together. I stayed hidden until nightfall, and then doubled back out of town. Fast. Didn't sleep that night. Didn't light a fire. I thought they were a one-time thing, some weird cult that passed through. You see strange things now. People who've snapped and think the infection is punishment or blessing. I once found a woman crucified upside down in a barn with the words "I offered myself" written in red above her. You learn not to ask why, you just leave. But then, this morning, it happened again. I was walking a ridge trail above the ruins of an old golf course when I spotted movement in the green below. I went prone and pulled the rifle scope from my bag. Useful even when you don't shoot. There they were, Same look, same people, or maybe just the same kind. Bare, dirty, their skin streaked in dark paint or blood. Some of them wore masks made from animal skulls or mesh fencing. They walked in a half circle, slow and wide, closing in on a man and a child. He looked like someone who'd been alone a long time. Rough beard, duct-tape jacket, knife at the belt. The kid was maybe 6. Little yellow coat, one boot missing. The man saw them and shouted something, raised his arms. The child clung to his hip. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the desperation. He backed away, stumbled, tried to get behind an overturned cart. The strangers surrounded him. Not quick, not with weapons, just slow and purposeful, like they'd done it before. One of them lunged. The man slashed with his knife, and another tackled him. The others piled on. It wasn't a fight, it was a ritual. I saw one lean close, mouth to the man's throat, and stay there, unmoving. When they pulled away, the man wasn't dead. He twitched, convulsed. Then he went still. The child screamed once. That part I did hear. The group rose. The man sat up. His face was blank, eyes fogged. The child tried to run. One of them, tall, bald, red smears across his chest, grabbed her and whispered something into her ear. Then, she stopped struggling, and they walked away together. I didn't move for an hour. The sun had dropped low, and the wind picked up through the pines. The sound of it made me feel like I was underwater. I kept thinking, how? How did they make him turn so fast? It doesn't happen that way. Not unless he was already infected. Unless they knew. Unless they planned it. I'm 3 days south of there now, avoiding roads, sleeping in lean-tos, eating canned corn from a rest stop I found abandoned. But the feeling hasn't left. It's like something old has found a new shape, like the world wasn't just infected, it was converted. Tonight, I camped near the edge of a hollow, low trees and briar thickets choking the path down. I saw footprints earlier, human, barefoot, too many. I should move, I should keep going, but there's smoke in the air, not fire, campfire, someone's down there. I know I shouldn't look, but I'm going to. I leave my pack behind and keep only the rifle and knife. I don't want the weight if I need to climb. The slope leading down into the hollow is steep and slick from old pine needles. I ease over the edge and test every step before shifting my weight. Halfway down, the forest thins into a clearing choked with briars and half-collapsed stone walls. Could have been a tobacco drying station once, or a cattle corral. Hard to tell anymore. Anything older than the outbreak looks ancient now, like it was left behind by something not quite human. Shadows stretch long from the west, casting orange lines through the underbrush. And there's the smoke. Just a thin line, rising like a thread, barely moving. I pause when I hear a voice. Not close, but low and steady. Too soft to catch the words. Not a scream, not even raised. It's the kind of voice someone uses when they want to be heard only by what's directly in front of them. I crawl forward, low to the ground, moving like the stray dogs I used to follow back when towns still had packs of them. The terrain flattens out, and I finally see the fire. It's small, barely more than a glow, ringed in stones and fed with slow-burning limbs. But it's not the fire that makes me stop. It's what's around it. 10, maybe 12, people are arranged in a semicircle, all kneeling. Most of them have their backs to me. One stands, his arms outstretched, palms coated in something dark and shiny. Blood, I think. He's tall, bald, and wears nothing but loose canvas pant and a belt made of woven fabric and dried ears of corn. I've seen photos of tribal rites before, in history books, cultural anthropology units. But this isn't that. This is something pulled from nightmares that don't belong to any one place or time. Behind him is a raised plank of wood set across 2 stumps like an altar. A girl lays on it, maybe 9 years old. Blonde hair cut rough and uneven, her clothes torn but intact. She doesn't move, but her chest rises and falls. She's breathing. Her hands are tied with some kind of cloth, fabric strips that look like hospital sheets, yellowed and frayed. The man with the blood on his palms walks slowly to her side. He holds his hands above her, palms down, like he's channeling something. Then he begins to speak in a rhythmic, pulsing chant. The others echo him, low like a heartbeat. I freeze. This isn't just a group of survivors who snapped. This is ritual. This is structure. I look at their bodies. Every one of them has cuts, carvings, strange symbols inked in red or black. Some look burned into the skin. A few have pieces of metal or bone woven into their hair. They don't just believe in something. They've built it. It has rules. Then I see them. Two blessed, as they'll later call them. At the edge of the clearing, tethered to tree trunks by twisted loops of barbed wire, stand two walkers, or what's left of them. They've been altered, dressed in robes of tarp and vine, faces partially painted with ash, eyes sunken but wide open. They don't moan or thrash. They don't even strain against the wire. They just stand, arms hanging, mouths slack, like puppets waiting for their cue. One of them still has a name tag hanging from a frayed lanyard. It reads, Care Team Volunteer, Kyle. The girl on the altar whimpers. It's so quiet, but I hear it. Just a faint, almost unwilling sound, like even her fear is muffled, half smothered by confusion or drugs. I don't know if I can do anything. I don't even know what I would do. Run in, untie her, shoot the man at the center and pray the rest scatter. They won't. They're too calm, too practiced. Whatever this is, they've done it before. And I've never taken a shot at a live human being, but I can't look away. Then something changes. From the edge of the circle, a woman steps forward, holding a bundle wrapped in cloth. She's older than the rest, with white paint across her eyes like a mask. Her arm is missing from the elbow down, wrapped in a rough bandage stained dark. She lays the bundle at the foot of the altar and kneels beside it, placing her face against the girl's bare foot in what looks like prayer. The bundle shifts. It's not a bundle, it's a child, younger than the girl on the altar, maybe 5, barefoot, hands tied behind his back. They untie him, and he doesn't run, he doesn't cry. He steps forward on command, like this is something he's rehearsed. The bald man lowers his arms and nods. The others rise. Then all at once, they bow. I slide back slowly, careful not to snap a twig. I make it 10 feet before I hear movement, not behind me, but above. The ridge. I whip around and see another figure, silhouetted in the last light of day, watching. I don't know how long he's been there. He hasn't called out. He just tilts his head slightly, then disappears over the edge. I don't go back up the ridge. I move sideways, along the slope, deeper into the woods, keeping the sound of the chant at my back. It grows louder, not softer, the farther I go, until it seems to throb in the trees themselves. My jaw aches from clenching. My fingers are raw where I've gripped the rifle too tight. But I keep walking. I don't stop until the sound is gone. That night, I don't sleep. I lie beneath the shell of a collapsed bridge, curled behind concrete, listening to the wind blow dead leaves through the hollow. At some point, I start to think about the boy. The younger one. The one who didn't fight. Didn't cry. That blank stare. I've seen that before. In other kids. Kids who lost everything and never got a chance to cry it out. You go quiet after a while. Numb. You go wherever the food is. Do whatever keeps hands from raising against you. You stop being a child and become something else. Something in between. By morning, I'm not sure if I dreamed it all, but the ash on my boots says I walked through that fire-lit clearing. The burrs on my jeans say I crawled through that bramble, and the dark mark on the edge of my rifle stock, like someone brushed it with wet charcoal. I know that's new. I move on, deeper south, past the hollow, past a ravine filled with rusted-out trailers and overgrown fences, past a creek with bones scattered along the stones, small, sun-bleached, maybe deer, maybe not. The woods get quieter. The drifters are fewer now. I spot one in the distance, near a collapsed farmhouse. He doesn't move like the others. He sways, slow and rhythmic, as if waiting for a signal. And he's not alone. 4 others hang near him, tethered by what looks like ropes. But when I get closer, I see the ropes are woven from plastic bags and braided with human hair. I veer off. I don't know where I'm heading. No destination anymore. Just away, away from the hollow, away from the chant. But later, On the fourth night, I find something that stops me cold. It's a sign, a real one, wooden, weather-worn but freshly painted in black, smeared letters. Sanctuary for the Purified, keep the faith, 4 miles. The arrow points into a dried-up creek bed that cuts west through the hills. I don't follow it, but I mark the location on a torn map I've been carrying since Alabama. I circle it in pencil, not because I want to return, but because I need to remember, because there's a pattern forming, a route. This wasn't a fluke. It's not just one group. It's a network, or worse, a movement. I camp high that night, on a rocky slope with only the moon for light. No fire, no noise. I eat what's left of the jerky and drink slow from a plastic jug I filled days ago. Then I write in the notebook I've carried since I was 15. Only a few pages left now. Day 717, hollow south of 431. Purified active. Witnessed ritual. Child present. Community organized. Signs of structure. Not random. I pause, then add, God help any child who walks in there alone. The wind changed after I wrote that. Not in temperature, though it had begun to cool, but in scent. It carried something unnatural, like the sting of copper and something dead left too long in water. I didn't smell it before. Now it was everywhere. It rode through the trees and clung to bark, stirred up from the hollow by movement I hadn't seen but could feel. I knew that smell. Death wasn't supposed to linger like that unless something was stirring it on purpose. Something moving beneath what should have rotted and settled long ago. I didn't sleep again. Not that night. Not the one after. I kept hiking west, circling wide around the dry creek bed, away from the marked path toward that so-called sanctuary. But every direction felt like it was pulling me toward it anyway. The air was too still. No birds, no bugs, no distant groans or shuffle of drifters. It was too quiet, and quiet is never safe anymore. It usually means something louder passed through already. 3 mornings later, I found the box truck. It was stuck between 2 leaning trees, halfway sunk in mud, like someone had tried to take a shortcut through the woods and got swallowed whole. The paint was long faded, but the side still read "Rourke Moving" and storage in ghosted letters. I approached slow, circling the front bumper, rifle ready. One door hung open, no sign of tracks, no smell of rot, but the windows were all blacked out from the inside. Not tinted, painted, sloppy thick brush strokes over the glass. I climbed up the driver's side using the bent step rail and pushed open the passenger door. Empty, or so I thought at first. Then I spotted it, a kid's drawing taped to the glove compartment. A crude picture of a stick figure with outstretched arms surrounded by red circles. At the bottom, someone had scrawled the word "blessed" in block letters. The E was backward. I don't know if it was meant to be written by a child or just to look like it. But the paper was clean, not weathered. It hadn't been there long. Inside the cargo bay, I found what I thought was a refugee camp setup. Blankets, canned food, empty water bottles stacked in crates. But as I stepped in, I saw more drawings. Hundreds of them, taped to the walls, stuck under straps, stuffed into crevices between the metal braces. Most were the same. Figures with open arms, red circles around their heads or hands, flames below their feet. One showed a line of people kneeling in front of something that looked like a throne, but the throne was made of bones. I didn't stay long. The truck was wrong. Not just eerie, intentional. Whatever had been in here wasn't passing through. It had waited here, and maybe it still was. That afternoon, I kept south toward the edge of what had once been farmland. I passed rusted-out equipment, silos bent from storms, fences turned into traps for walkers, those that still wandered this far. I started to notice odd things left in places they shouldn't be. An empty child's shoe hanging from a tree limb, a line of corn husks laid carefully across a stump, dried and yellowing, but arranged like an offering. At one fence post, I found a small doll made from cloth and hair, its face marked with the same red rings as the drawings. Then I heard the singing, soft, carried on the wind. A single voice at first, female I think, singing something without real words, just rising and falling tones that circled each other like a lullaby turned inside out. I crouched low behind a berm and watched the source. A group of 6 walked in formation, 3 in front, 3 behind, carrying something between them on a makeshift litter woven from rope and bedsheets. On it lay a drifter, not restrained, not biting, just lying there, motionless, like a prize being paraded. The carrier group moved in lockstep, heads bowed. Painted symbols covered their faces. One had branches wired to his shoulders like wings. Another had thorns woven into her hair. I didn't follow them. I watched them pass and waited until the sound faded, then moved again, faster this time. I don't know how far their reach extends. The map I marked back by the ridge now felt inadequate. What if this cult wasn't just in that one hollow? What if the Purified were spreading outward, fanning across counties, leaving signs for others, gathering the way storms do over flat land? Late that night, I broke into a ranger station near the river. It was still intact, probably because it was remote and hard to spot from above. The place had been abandoned in a hurry, cupboards left open, maps scattered on the desk, a radio unit half torn from the console. I locked the door behind me, stacked furniture against the windows, and allowed myself a few hours of rest. First real sleep in almost a week. When I woke up, there was a voice coming from the radio. I sat up fast, hand on my rifle, heart thudding, but no one was in the room. The voice was weak, broken by static, but unmistakably human. A man, middle-aged by the sound of it. He was reading something. Names. For Sanctuary, welcomed on the 4th dawn, Annabelle Curran, Jonah Reese, Little Nadia, Blessed Be. Then a pause, then again, the same names, slightly different order. It wasn't live, it was a loop. I checked the signal panel. The transmission wasn't coming from this station, it was being picked up from somewhere else. Low frequency, short range, but nearby. And just like that, I knew the Purified were using the old Ranger relay tower network. Low power transmitters, hidden in trees or high ridges, range under 20 miles. They weren't broadcasting to everyone, just to each other, passing coded messages, lists, locations, initiates. That's how they spread. That's how they stayed coordinated without drawing the wrong attention. I spent the next 3 hours scanning every inch of the cabin, found a stash of Ranger patrol logs, most dated before the outbreak, but one stood out. The last entry was a week after the world went quiet, scrawled by hand, short, shaky handwriting. Group passed through, painted, barefoot, said they were feeding the forest. I said nothing. They didn't ask. No signature. I packed the logbook and made a note to keep moving. I knew now that the woods were no longer neutral. Not all the infected had to move to be dangerous. Some were placed, displayed, worshipped, maybe even fed. A day later, I found my first shrine. It was deep in a thicket where trees grew too close together for light to reach the ground. I stepped in only because I was tracking a stream bed and lost my bearing. In the center of a dark clearing stood a tree with symbols carved into the bark. Circles, spirals, jagged runes that didn't match any alphabet I knew. At the base of the tree was a drifter, chained by the neck, kneeling. He didn't react to my presence, didn't even turn his head, just knelt there, motionless, like a statue. His body had been covered in grey powder or ash, and small twigs were pressed into the flesh of his back, pushed under the skin like someone had tried to make him part of the forest. I didn't try to help. There was no helping that. The eyes were already gone. Not closed. Gone. Removed. Stuffed with wet leaves. I backed out the way I came and marked another X on my map. Everywhere I went, I started seeing signs. Circles burned into barn doors. Piles of rocks arranged in threes. Messages etched into glass. Shed the skin. Keep the spirit. Join the living dead. The virus is the light. That last one chilled me most. The virus isn't light. It's rot. It takes people and scrapes them hollow, leaves the meat walking until it collapses into mud. But for the Purified, that's the point. They see that process as holy, a shedding of false identity, a return to something simpler, more true, as I heard one say later. But that was still to come. I hadn't spoken to any of them yet. I hadn't been seen. At least I thought I hadn't. Until I woke one morning and found the mark. It was on a piece of bark, propped beside where I'd been sleeping. A spiral drawn in blood. No tracks. No sign of approach. Whoever left it had done so silently, with purpose. And it wasn't just a warning. It was an invitation. I didn't touch the bark. I left it where it was, and backed away from the little hollow I'd used for shelter. My bedroll still damp from the night, the fire pit cold and undisturbed. My rifle stayed at my side, my finger just resting on the guard. If they'd been close enough to place something beside my head, they could have killed me. But they didn't. They wanted me to know I was being watched. I started walking before the sun had burned off the mist, the damp clinging to my clothes as I pushed through the underbrush with no clear direction. I wasn't thinking about food or water. I didn't feel hunger, not the way you normally do, just the dull pressure behind my eyes, the kind that comes from too many nights without rest and too much time spent trying to make sense of the senseless. I moved uphill, picking a path through the narrow switchbacks and sandstone veins that cut across the ridge. The terrain forced me to stay alert, but I didn't mind the climb. It gave me distance, a way to breathe above the tree line, above the places where people had started carving faith into whatever was left of the world. When I finally reached the overlook, I dropped my pack and crouched low behind a patch of scrub pine, the needles sharp against my wrists as I steadied myself. From there, I had a full view of the valley and the folds of forest stretching out in every direction. I stayed like that for maybe half an hour, quiet, still, trying to sort through the noise in my head. I couldn't shake the image of that spiral, the one left beside my bedroll, drawn in blood. It hadn't been a warning. It had been deliberate, purposeful. That mark wasn't just theirs. It was everywhere. I'd seen it scratched into rusted guardrails on back roads, etched into the pews of a burned-out church, even carved into the chest of a drifter slumped against chain-link fencing, his eyes already gone. It was a signature, a claim, a message. And then, something shifted. At first, I thought it was a trick of the wind, or maybe a shift in the brush, but the air around me went still, and a subtle tension pulled at the edge of my thoughts. I turned without meaning to, just a quiet reflex. And that's when I saw him. He stood just outside the line of low shrubs that circled the ridge, maybe 15 feet away. I hadn't heard a single step, not a crunch of leaves, not the snap of a branch, nothing. He wasn't trying to hide, tall, broad-shouldered, with a beard gone mostly silver and wild along his jaw. He looked like someone who'd spent a long time walking, longer still surviving. The rifle across his shoulder was old but clean, its strap patched in more than one place. A machete hung at his opposite hip, dulled from use but resting easy. He kept both weapons where they were, didn't flinch, didn't speak. He just watched me. "Didn't mean to startle you," he said. "Been following since the ridge 2 nights ago. You're not one of them." I didn't reply. Not right away. I watched his hands, his stance, the way his voice stayed level but not rehearsed. There was no doctrine in it, no echo of the chants I'd heard from the hollow. "You saw me," I said finally, "up top, when they had the girl." He nodded once. "Saw you see what I saw. Thought maybe you were scouting for them at first. You don't move like them, though. You're careful, quiet, not one of the converted." He crouched then, not close, but near enough that I could see the lines beneath his eyes. They weren't angry, just exhausted. "My name's Jace," he said. "I had a camp, 20 miles northeast. Old elementary school we turned into shelter. We kept it quiet, barred the windows, posted watches, rationed supplies. Thought we were safe enough. Then 3 nights ago they came. I still hadn't lowered my rifle. He didn't ask me to. Didn't make a sound until they were already inside the fence," he continued. "No gunfire, just movement, like a wave of bodies rolling in. Mud, blood, no lights. They moved like shadows, but they were everywhere. Took out both perimeter guards. One of them, Lee, she tried to hit the alarm. Didn't make it." He looked past me then, toward the trees, like he was replaying it all in his head, and couldn't stop the tape. "They didn't take food, didn't take weapons. Just children. 4 of them, including my son." I swallowed hard. The breath caught in my throat. I could see the detail in his face shift. Something too deep for grief. Older than rage. It wasn't just loss. It was focus. A purpose sharpened by time and pain. You followed them, I said. I tried, he replied. But they don't leave tracks. Not the kind you can follow with boots and a compass. They use signal markers. They send messages with things, symbols, arrangements. I figured out some of it, enough to know where they were heading. I saw you watching their right. I thought, maybe you were one of them. But then, I saw the way you pulled back. The way you disappeared afterward. You're a ghost like me. He reached slowly into his jacket and pulled out a folded square of paper. He passed it to me across the dirt. A map, hand-drawn, rough outlines of local terrain, creeks, ridgelines, a few labeled markers I recognized. Sunken Ford, Split Oak Hollow, Three Stones Church. There were circles along the map, drawn in red grease pencil. At least 9 of them. One of them matched the spot where I'd seen the girl laid out on the altar. Another matched the truck I'd found in the mud. This is how far they've spread, Jace said, or how far I've seen. Each one of these is a site, a place they gather, practice, convert. Some are small, just shrines. Others are whole communities now. What do they want? I asked. He didn't answer for a moment. Then, they believe the infection is truth, that it strips away the mask of civilization. They think death isn't the end, just a gate, and the drifters are what's left of those who passed through wrong, the ones who weren't purified first. I felt the wind shift across the ridge, cool and dry, the kind of breeze that carries the smell of smoke even if there's none burning nearby. I looked at the map again and realized the red marks weren't random. They curved in a slow spiral, each one closer to the center. There, I said, tapping the innermost ring. That's their heart. Jace nodded grimly. Sanctuary, that's what they call it. No one I've known who went there came back, but that's where they're keeping them. My son, and others. He stood again, slow and deliberate. I'm going, he said. Tomorrow night. I'll scout it first, approach through the southern ridge. But I'll be going in, one way or another. If you want to walk away now, I won't stop you. But you've seen what they are, and I don't think they're going to stop spreading unless someone stops them. I folded the map and tucked it into my coat pocket. I didn't speak for a long time. Then I said, I'll go with you. Not because I thought we'd win, not because I believed in some heroic ending, but because I had to see it. I had to know what lay at the center of that spiral, and if I could help pull even one child out of that madness, even one, I wouldn't regret the risk. We made camp that night in silence, taking shifts on watch. I thought about the boy I'd seen days earlier, the one who walked away with them without a struggle. I thought about his blank face, the way he moved like he wasn't real. If Jace's son was still alive, still himself, then we had a window, a small one. We broke camp before dawn and traveled light. No fire, no trails. Jace moved like someone who had lived in the woods long before the world fell. He read the ground, the air, the trees. I followed his lead, listening to every whisper of movement around us, every squirrel scatter, every bird alarm. We were being watched, not constantly, but enough that I felt it like pressure behind my eyes. By dusk, we reached the last ridge before the valley where Sanctuary was marked on the map. We didn't crest it, not yet. We camped low, concealed in an outcrop of stone and bramble, overlooking a shallow gorge that fed into the valley floor. Jace laid out old photographs, printed ones, faded and soft at the edges. 4 children, his son in the middle, a kid with a missing front tooth and a t-shirt too big for his frame. Alive, smiling. This was before, Jace said softly, before the world cracked open. He passed me a small field scope. Take a look, dead center. There's a structure in the hollow. I brought the scope to my eye and scanned the valley. There it was. A long building, low roof, no windows. Possibly an old community center or hunting lodge. Around it stood makeshift walls of stacked junk and timber, not for defense but display. Hanging from those walls were symbols, ornaments, bones. Painted cloth fluttered like banners, and inside the perimeter, figures moved. Not hurried, not hiding. They weren't afraid of anything coming. I watched as two men dragged something from a side shed and laid it on the ground. They knelt. Others gathered. And just behind them, barely visible in the low light, was a line of children. They stood perfectly still. That's what struck me most. Not fear, not confusion, just stillness. Like they'd been waiting for this exact moment, this exact place. There were maybe 7 of them, though the brush and the failing light made it hard to tell. All about the same age. One of them had the same yellow jacket as the child I'd seen back at the altar. Another, smaller, held a bundle of something I couldn't make out. A cloth doll or maybe a wrapped charm. From up here they looked like a painting done in dusk tones, all muted reds and browns and shadows. But there was no doubt. They were alive. Jace lowered the scope and exhaled slow. They haven't been turned. Not yet. That's something. They're being prepared, I said. They call it inoculation. I've heard it, seen the beginning of it. His jaw tightened. He didn't need to ask how it ended. We spent the next hour watching, planning. The perimeter was weak on the east side, just a wall of scavenged pallets stacked between trees. The other sides were more built up, with frames of corrugated metal, trash netting, and even old road signs. Jace marked the weakest point in the dirt and whispered what we'd do. Split up and enter simultaneously. He from the low ditch, me from the ridge above, cross signals if one of us got spotted. No gunfire unless necessary. Take what children we could. Get out. That was the plan. But plans don't matter once the breathing starts. We waited until night swallowed the last rim of light and crept down into the dark. The moon was behind clouds, but the camp had its own light. Oil lamps, spaced like stars across the hollow. Enough to see by, enough to cast long shadows. I circled from the north and took cover near a rotting pickup that had been half buried in brush. From there, I saw more of them. Adults in pairs, or alone, drifting between tasks like they weren't people but gears in a machine that had long ago stopped making sense. No one laughed. No one talked. The children had been moved. They were now inside the central structure, an old hall with a sagging roof and broken vents. I spotted their silhouettes behind patched windows, huddled or seated, waiting. One window had bars. The other had cloth nailed across it from inside. Then I saw him, Jace's son, standing apart from the others. Arms crossed, face drawn. He wasn't under control, not yet. He still had that wary, tight posture of someone clinging to what's left of himself. Jace was right. He was still in there. I crept low, crossed the open lane between the truck and the east wall, and made it to the pallets without a sound. Through the gaps, I saw Jace crouched behind a burned-out ATV frame on the opposite side. He gave the signal. 3 fingers. 1 minute. That's when the bell rang. A deep, rusted thing hung from a post near the center of the compound, and someone struck it once. Not a call to arms. Not an alarm. A summons. From every corner of the camp, the Purified began to gather. They formed lines, moved with purpose, stepped into formation without a word. I froze, unsure if we'd been spotted. But no. This was a ritual. Pre-planned. Scheduled. Jace waved once and disappeared into the brush, looping toward the back of the hall. I followed my own path, keeping low, slipping between stacked crates and tarps stiff with grime. The closer I got to the hall, the more I could hear. Chants, low and rhythmic, pulsing like breath through teeth. I reached the west wall of the building and found the boarded-up window. My fingers dug at the edge of the cloth. I peeled it back just enough to look in. The children sat in rows. A few swayed, dazed. One rocked forward and back, but Jace's son stared straight ahead, alert, focused. I whispered. It wasn't his name. I didn't know it. Just a hiss, soft and short, enough to pull his eyes to mine. Recognition. He didn't smile, didn't move, but his shoulders loosened a little. A fraction. He understood. Then the door opened, and a tall figure entered the hall. I ducked below the window just in time. From inside, the chanting surged. The ritual had begun. I circled to the back. Jace was already there, at a boarded door barely held by one rusted hinge. He had his machete in hand and had just begun sawing silently at the side when I joined him. "We go in," he whispered. "Fast. Pull the kids. Get out." I nodded. We counted off. 3, 2. He kicked. The door cracked inward, the board splintered, and we were in. The room erupted in chaos. The children startled. Some cried out. The tall figure, the priest maybe, whirled, his robe flaring, and reached for something at his belt. Jace moved first. One blow of the machete dropped the man where he stood. "Move!" I shouted. "Now!" I herded the kids, pulled them from the room, Jace leading the first 3 out the rear. More cultists appeared at the far end, but they weren't armed, just stunned. It was happening too fast. We hit the back gate just as someone rang the bell again, this time fast and frantic. We ran. I don't remember the exact path, only branches tearing my sleeves and the sound of boots and bare feet crashing through the forest. Jace had 2 children slung across his back, another holding his hand. I carried the smallest, a girl no older than 4, wrapped in a blanket that wasn't hers. Behind us came shouts, then the sound of the drifters. They'd been brought close again, as guards, pets, or maybe just as part of the process. We didn't stop until the ridge. By then we couldn't hear the bell anymore, only the wind and our own breath. Jace turned, eyes wide, scanning the group. 7. He counted them again. All 7 were there. We moved for hours after that. Dawn was creeping up the back of the hills before we stopped in an old culvert beneath a broken rail line. There, finally, we rested. No fire, just stillness. No one spoke. Later, after the kids had dozed off, curled against whatever dry patch they could find, Jace came over to where I sat against a stone wall. He didn't say thank you. He didn't cry. After we settled into the culvert, and the children drifted off into shallow, uneasy sleep, Jace sat across from me, his back against a rusted pipe. He didn't say anything at first, just watched the kids. His son was curled next to the youngest girl, the one I'd carried out wrapped in that too thin blanket. There was dirt on their faces, scratches along their arms, but they were alive. Not chanting, not hollow, just exhausted and breathing. Eventually, he spoke. Quiet, like he was saying it more to himself than to me. "We're heading east. There's a group I heard about. Up in the hills past the river. Ex-military types. Maybe a few medics. They've got water, some kind of solar setup. Just enough structure to matter. People are trying to rebuild there. Not much, but more than nothing." I nodded, my eyes still on the far end of the pipe, where one of the older boys had wedged himself behind a crate for security. "That's good," I said. "That's something." "You could come with us," Jace added. Not pressing, just offering. "I know." He let it hang there. I think he understood the weight of what I didn't say. He didn't try to sell it. No promises, no speeches about how things might get better. Just silence, broken by the soft sound of water dripping somewhere down the line. I didn't answer that night. In the morning, when the sky had turned pale and the forest was nothing but outlines of trees in mist, I helped them pack what little they had. I led them for a while, past the split in the ridge, over the ravine, down toward the flatland where the rivers forked. I cleared the path where I could. Jace and I traded watch. I knew the direction. I knew how to move unseen. So I walked with them, for a time. But every step we took together, I felt something pulling back inside me. A tightness I couldn't ignore. The kids didn't talk much, still too shocked. Jace moved with purpose, one hand always ready, but he watched me now and then, like he knew, like he could see it in my gait, in the way I scanned the tree line too often. I wasn't settling, I wasn't staying. When we reached the old road, what used to be County Route 48, we stopped. The cracked asphalt stretched east, broken and sun-bleached, but the trees had thinned out here. It was safer ground. I pointed him toward a drainage culvert that ran beneath a rise. "There's a water catch up ahead," I said. "Old livestock tank. If it hasn't dried up, you'll be able to refill there. After that, keep east along the utility line. That'll take you straight to the crossing." He looked at me, not surprised, just tired. "This is where we part ways?" "I'll take you to the crossing," I said, "but no farther." "You don't think the camp's real?" "I think it might be," I answered. And I think that's good. For them. He glanced back at the children, then squinted down the road. But not for you. I've seen too many groups try to rebuild, I said, and I've seen what happens when they think they've done it. It starts small, routines, boundaries, plans. Then come the rules. Then someone decides who gets to enforce them, who gets in, who gets left out. That's how it always starts. That's how it always ends. He was quiet a while. Then, it doesn't have to. No, I said, but it always does. We walked the last mile in silence. No one followed us. No sign of the Purified. Just birds in the distance and the crunch of gravel under our boots. When we reached the split in the terrain, a point where the eastward trail narrowed and the woods fell away into an open basin, I stopped. This is it, I said. Jace looked out over the stretch of valley. Somewhere beyond that line of trees, there might really be a place, a scrap of order, a chance. He turned back to me and held out his hand. Whatever happens next, he said, thank you. I didn't shake it. I stepped forward and hugged him. It lasted only a moment, long enough for the cold in my chest to loosen a fraction. Then I stepped back, nodded once, and turned around. I didn't watch them go. I heard the rustle of their movement, the light crunch of small shoes and bare feet, and Jace's quiet voice guiding them forward. Then nothing. I followed a different path, one that curved west into the forest. I moved fast, cutting through overgrowth, rejoining the trail I'd left behind. There was no comfort in it, no safety, just the rhythm of movement and the silence of being alone again. I climbed back to the ridge that overlooked the compound. It was empty now. The Purified were gone. Whether they scattered to other hollows or were tracking new converts elsewhere, I didn't know. I didn't care. The structure still stood. The banners flapped in the breeze. The spiral symbols burned into the ground still glowed faint with oily residue. But the altar was empty. The chains had been cut. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just stood there until the sun rose fully and the light spilled over the trees like fire. Then I kept walking. I don't know where I'm going next. Maybe west. Maybe farther. There's talk on old channels. People rebuilding in desert towns. Out in what used to be New Mexico or Arizona. Places where the infection moves slower. Maybe it's true. Maybe it's a trap. But I'll go. Because I wasn't meant to stop. I wasn't meant to rest in one place and believe in walls. I've seen too much. I carry too much. And because I've learned something no shelter can teach you. The world didn't end because of the infection. It ended when we started worshipping it. And what comes after? That's up to people like me. People who walk alone. People who keep watch. People who don't forget. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more unsettling creepypastas. Your support keeps my channel alive. Until next time, stay quiet, stay vigilant, and trust nothing, not even the silence.